Hello, everybody, and welcome to our March 2026 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by our esteemed faculty member, Stevie Lowe. So, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And how are you doing today?
Hey Kyle, I'm doing good. Excited to be back with you for the equinox.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for the start here.
Mhm.
Okay, so before Stevie, we get into the details of each week, what are your thoughts for an overview for March?
March, I think March is a month of decoding coded languages. March is a month of decoding, but also we're getting a lot of boundaries versus boundlessness challenged. I think that's a big theme for March.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my overview for March is that it's a tale of two halves. At the beginning of March, if we're looking to take action, I think it's important for us to swim with the currents versus going against them. We have a stellium of planets in Pisces, and to reinforce this water theme, all of those planets are going to be disposited by a Jupiter that's also in a water sign. And with all this mutability, I think it's going to be important for us to stay as flexible as possible. Because if we think about this even on terms of an individual and collective level, we're in the stage now where we don't really want to get swept up too much with the emotions of events and try and stay nimble as possible. We're just
Mhm.
coming off the energy of the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries. So, collectively, unfortunately, I don't know if we're banging the drums for war, but I think for us on a personal level, I think if we can stop ourselves from getting swept away in the ever changing events, that I think we need to pay attention to our mental health and in some ways disconnect as best as possible this month.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, the water signs are always protective, and we don't seem to associate that with Pisces so often, but it is also protective in its sense of receiving, understanding what's going on, feeling the sense of need for security. So yeah, there is definitely, especially we'll go into it with starting with March 2nd, Mars, that is part of the protectiveness that we'll see coming in hot.
Great point, Stevie. And speaking of the first week, let's dive into it. So, what are your thoughts for the first week of March?
Yeah, I think what stands out is the lunar eclipse on the Virgo Pisces axis. It'll be more eclipse energy, so it'll be the closing of the eclipse energies for now. So we might feel that liminal space kind of close for a moment, and less of like what will happen and more of like what is happening. Like less of this anticipatory nature of it. And we have the ruler of the Virgo moon in Pisces at this point, retrograde. So that's going to be a lot of Mercury retrograde story can be wrapped up in this lunar eclipse as well.
Yeah, wonderful points. And it almost has, for me, the first week like a daydream quality. And this is probably my favorite week of the month. If you have a bit of time to maybe disconnect, this is a great time to, again, we've got Mercury retrograde in Pisces, now traditionally not in great shape in Pisces, but its dispositor is Jupiter. So if you have big, bold ideas this week, I certainly won't get to a point of taking action on them, but I'll just ruminate on those ideas. And with the Mars in Pisces, you might get to a point where you're pushed in different directions. You've got the polarity, the mutability. So it's a great time and a great week to disconnect. If you're artistically inclined, it might be a wonderful time to pick up a paintbrush. We have the Venus Neptune conjunction. Yes, it's in Aries, but a great time to disconnect. With Mercury retrograde, it's always those rewords to reread. So if you have any books that you haven't read for a while, this is a great time to just get in a form of escapism. Read books, pick up a paintbrush, just enjoy this week because I like some of the energies we've got. Yes, we've got the energy of the full moon that permeates through this week, but all in all, this is probably my favorite week if you have the option to maybe take a couple of days off. Now, conversely, if you're at work and this is a busy time, this might be a little bit frustrating for you. Again, not when we've got the Mercury retrograde, where the information not might be very clear. Here, it just might be a sense of being a bit frustrated at work. So if you have the option, maybe take a day or two off to just disengage, and that form of escapism might be really helpful this week.
Yeah, and if you are a Mercury Pisces person natally, or even maybe a retrograde Mercury, you might find that you might be very helpful in the workplace this week, and you might be the one who solves problems, or we might find that going back over old problems, we might be able to resolve. So better to ruminate over what you have previously left undone than to initiate something new. But like Callum said, Sun trine Jupiter, Venus conjunct Neptune, so there is ample time to enjoy yourself safely. I'm gonna be going to a museum in LA on March 7th, so it's perfect for the Venus conjunct Neptune for me. So yeah.
I love that and how you've chosen that date to go to a museum. That's a beautiful day. So if anyone has that, something they would
Mhm.
like to do like that, I would definitely take a note out of your book, Stevie. Wonderful. Okay, what are your thoughts for the second week of March?
Yeah, so we have Venus conjunct Neptune, but the anticipatory nature of 1 degree is not much. So we have an immediate consequence. So enjoy yourself in the first week of March, but not too much, because by the second week there will be restrictions. So we have Venus conjoining Saturn. Last year we had Venus retrograde in Aries. This time we have Venus conjoining Saturn. And so there could be a difficulty in harmony and exerting yourself at this point. There could be some personal restrictions for some maybe some needed bed rest, or like stifling out a fire that has grown. But then you get Venus sextile Pluto, which gives, I mean, all of these outer planets and Saturn getting all of this action is a little bit like executive moves are happening too. So it's, Venus is going to try and bring harmony, but in the area of Aries, Aries isn't a harmonious place, so it's not super easy to bring harmony, and it's going to be coming in sort of this peaked up kind of amped up way.
Yeah, great point. Because my feeling for week two is that we might have some difficulties in our interpersonal relationships. As you've mentioned, Venus in Aries, in her detriment, doesn't have the access to her resources, along with Saturn, which falls in Aries, both ruled by Mars. So we have both planets here, not only a difficult conjunction with Venus in the outer and the greater malefic, they're both having to struggle to gain their access to their resources. So again, we might have some struggles, interpersonal relationships. On the collective, I can't see this being a great financial picture in the markets. And as we've just seen, the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs in the United States, but it looks like the administration are going to try and find some workarounds. So I still see some volatility maybe in the financial markets, and that can speak to our own finances. Maybe that Venus and the Saturn gives us a bit of a reality check. Because as you mentioned, that Venus has just come off its conjunction with Neptune, where it might be a great time to go to a museum, but in terms of practically thinking about our resources, it might not be very clear. And Saturn, even in our relationships, might give us a reality check. Venus
Mhm.
comes off Neptune. It might be that rose tinted glasses for a day, straight bang into Saturn. Here's a reality check. Okay, what do we need to work on in terms of these relationships, or how this might play out collectively? Then we
Mhm.
move on to Jupiter finally stationing to go direct. As we know, when a planet stations to go direct or retrograde, usually one of the planets that are loudest in the sky. Now, this can be both skilled and unskilled. Jupiter, we think about the greater benefic, can maybe bring some positivity, maybe in the area of the chart we'll look at each rising sign, but it can also bring a shadow side where it just exacerbates all of the events going on. And when you tie this in with the Mars magnified with its conjunction to the North Node, if there's any volatility in our collective events, it might just amplify what's going on. And with the Mercury retrograde, the information we're getting might not be very clear. So this can go either way, I think, for week two.
Mhm. Yeah, week two has its ups and downs. We have the Mars conjunct the North Node to dispositing to Aries dispositor, and so you have an emphasis on violence potentially right there. So, you want to You want to just know that there might be a growing tenseness. I do think the Jupiter stationing direct is going to be a bit of a bomb. I think Jupiter, it can be on its finest aspects of it will be hope and faith. And so if you feel despaired. I think after several months, I think there might be an uptick in possible hope available to you with this Jupiter stationing. So at least allow yourself an opening to that. If you've been doing any working with Jupiter, you've probably been taking a break and just, tending to things, but now it's Jupiter's back on, so now we can sort of prioritize our Jupiterian goals and aspirations.
I love that, Stevie, talking about it in the terms of hope. And I think that's such an important keyword because not only have we got the greater benefic, it's exalted in Cancer. So hopefully, with whatever's going on collectively, hopefully we have that sense of hope moving forward. And of course, you can look at your own chart to see what houses those are pulling in. So I love that point, Stevie. Okay, into the third week of March. Stevie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Mercury is sort of the belle of the ball. Again, for people who are really into like if you're into like modding video games, this month is gonna be awesome for you. But otherwise, it's you're gonna have to find that very niche place for you to shine this month. And if you don't have a special interest hobby for this Mercury retrograde, I think this week is like, whoa, 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 you have that Mars conjunction right off the bat and then hitting the North Node. And so it's just gonna be a final big splash, I guess, if you will, of what happens before the direct station. You have Venus squaring Jupiter, which is it's a tense aspect, but you can't really go too wrong with two benefics, no matter what they're doing. They might just be arguing over who looks prettier. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry too much about that one.
Yeah, as you pointed out, Stevie, this is a very mercurial week. We've got the Mercury joining forces with Mars. It's going to be amplified by the North Node. And as we get deeper into the week, it's going to be stationing to go direct. So, again, the thing I might be careful for here, if we have an expression of Mercury conjunct Mars, I have the expression of those be fighting words. So I would just be mindful when dealing with co workers, especially bosses, even family and friends, just be careful about what you say because your words can be quite combative or cutting at this point. Now, this might not be you initiating that conversation, it might be something that happens to you. So just be mindful of this energy in terms of that. But I think what may soften the blow here is that we're starting to come up towards a new moon. So the moon is waning, it's getting less energy in the sky. And I think this water energy might soften the blow somewhat. So
Mhm.
certainly watch out for what we're saying and how we're communicating. But, and especially, in Pisces, in its detriment and fall, information might not be that clear. So if you're having an argument with someone, you might be basing that argument on erroneous information. So just keep that in mind as well. But I think this waning of the moon and the softening of the water might just help out a little bit here. And Stevie, so we're getting into the equinox. We've got the start of the astrological calendar, sun going into Aries. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we're just having Venus go through this Saturn Neptune kind of conjunction, separating conjunct. And now we have the sun, but with the sun, it brings its exaltation expectations and its very bright rays. And so there's I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to predict for this. I the best I could have is boundaries versus boundlessness. There is a total almost like whiplash that you feel with cardinal fire and not having the sun be able to sort of shepherd itself into the spring. But it's going through this like waterfall, and then it's going through a big boulder, brick wall, or giant ember. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be dramatic, to say the least. Very dramatic.
I think you make a really good, important point, especially going through the elements, going out of water, where if we're going for a swim into fire, we've jumped out of the pool, then we're getting on our car and we're just going hell for leather. So usually it's the most interesting times where we make that shift from water to fire. So this is going to be very interesting. I do love the sun gains its exaltation here. And I think that speaks to the two parts of this month, where the first month we might be getting swept away with the emotions, having to navigate the currents of the waters. But as we get later in the month with more planets going into fire, it's time to start taking action. And especially when we get into the middle of April, we're going to have all of our planets direct. Then it's the time to take action and just go for it and not having to be more contemplative and think over things. Eventually, in the middle of April, as we get Mercury goes into cardinal fire, we might be ready to take action and go forward with all of the planets going direct.
hmm And when the sun's gonna be Neptune and Saturn will be combust, so that again kind of speaks to this something happening that is washed out by the rays of the sun. So there could even be almost like a diversion of attention when the real things are might emerge once the sun releases them from the beams of it itself. So yeah, it might not be dramatic right away. It might be one that kind of sneaks up on you as well. So it's I just think we've been waiting for this sort of Saturn Neptune to be conjunct in Aries for now, for long, for good, and now we have the sun kind of coming into the mix saying hello. And yeah, I think this is gonna be a big spring for all of us. And also I guess we can think about it in sense of this really drastic winter we had, and sort of like, well, I think we're gonna be having a different kind of experience in spring, but it's gonna be quite an experience to follow up with.
I really like that point. I wonder as we get to spring, of course, here in the United States, especially when it gets to really tumultuous storms or tornadoes, I wonder if this is going to be quite a significant season. I'm not too sure. I'm just thinking all the planets dancing into the beginning of Aries, Sun, Venus has met up with the Saturn and Neptune. So I wonder if there'll be maybe some weather volatility going out of the winter into a bang of cardinal fire, and we'll see. Hopefully, nothing too extreme, but we'll see what happens. Okay, into week 4, Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so we have the official conjunct Sun conjunct Neptune now, and Sun conjunct Saturn, but I think we're definitely going to feel these things on the ingress because it's just too close and they are combust. But then we'll get the Kazemi moment. So I think that'll be pretty interesting, maybe revelatory moments in this time of confusion, boundaries versus boundlessness. You have Mercury direct now conjunct the North Node, but I don't think it's making anything much more clear, to be honest. It's sort of just like, hey, remember that eclipse? And so, remember that retrograde and eclipse? Don't worry, I'm going direct now. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that we're stepping out of the confusion at any rate, but there might be a little taste of clarity or like potency with the Kazimis.
Wonderful point. And I think as we get into week 4, I think certainly towards the end of the week, the biggest news story is Venus going out of her detriment into her home sign. It's an earthy quality here, so we can think about tangible qualities of life and bringing some of that earthiness into the skies where we can try and ground ourselves, at least for a little while, and maybe enjoy some pleasures of life, whether that's good food or just, being tangible, hugging family and friends. And I think this is going to be helpful because we've had this Venus in a detriment. As we get into week 4, it's going to make the conjunction with Chiron. So in our interpersonal relationships, if they've been a bit rocky, a bit fiery, especially with a conjunction to Chiron, if there's some wounds that need to be talked out or healed in some way as we get to the end of the week in pretty much into the new month, maybe we can smooth some of those out and go back to being more grounded in what we're
Mhm.
doing at that point.
Yeah, I love the Venus Taurus, and I think I should have said this at the initial overview, but I think part of the overview too is just Venus is really zipping through there, and Mercury, even though retrograde, does kind of feel like it's just kind of zipping through because it's just doing so much in Pisces. So I think their March as a whole is going to feel like there are dramatic, just like solid dramatic points, but I just also feel like it's going to almost be a fever dream, just a lot of change, Venus changing signs multiple times, Mercury changing directions. and then planets greeting the Saturn Neptune in cardinal fire. So a lot of kind of fever dream feeling for this month.
I love that, Stevie. And I wonder, on more of a mundane sense, we've got the Sun, obviously very quick conjunction to Saturn, but we might see around the world a leader that's restricted in some way. And as that Venus goes into a domicile, maybe some of the financial picture eases up slightly, because maybe, I don't know, it could be a court decision, something along these lines where someone's restricted and there's a bit of ease. But again, these are so fast moving planets, whether that builds into the bigger picture of some of the detrimental qualities we've been dealing with. Whether that will help, we'll have to see as we get further on.
Yeah, yeah. On a mundane level, I mean, Venus and Aries is really, it's hard not to say Epstein files, but a lot of like very survivor energy with Neptune, Saturn, then having to square Jupiter. That square might even be the courts as well, coming from Saturn going to Jupiter. And so Venus going into Taurus is sort of like, okay, women of the world, like you can take a collective breath for a month, and you have Venus at home, and harmony between people and sort of salaciousness might kind of calm down a little bit, and we might have material capacity um to take the next step that's good for us.
It's a really interesting note about the Epstein files and Venus being a female archetype planet and, ruled by Mars, this fighting quality. And this will go down in history, surely, as the biggest cover up of all time. Now, people like to talk about Watergate, but Watergate is like stealing candy from a baby versus all of the turmoil and constant corruption we're seeing over here. And so I wonder if, those files come back into well, they're permeating through the public consciousness now already. But whether we hear more stories, more, as you're pointed out, the salacious stories that keep coming out, this is going to be, I think, a continued theme because we're not being shown the full picture. And with Mercury in detriment and its fall, we're not getting the clear picture anyway. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out for, I think.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, Stevie, thank you so much for going through each energies of the week of March. Now let's get to our rising signs. So, Stevie, for our Aries rising friends, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love your keywords here. 12th house related a lot. We have some second house stuff. I think the biggest shift we know is going to be the equinox. We have spring coming coming home to you. So I think there's going to be a level of vitality, but obviously with Neptune and Saturn in your first house, that comes with a big caveat. Now, having the exaltation Lord and sort of, the light of our solar system, coming to your first house is great. And I think that, when you get these, especially fire sign transits from the sun, um, those are going to be the months that you really can utilize the difficult changes, or maybe some of these restrictions can lighten up. So I hope that with the sun's ingress into Aries, many of you can just get a little bit of revitalizing to go forward. Because I know you're kicking it off here with this conjunction, and that's a lot.
Wonderful advice. And I think my key phrase for Aries rising is just to take stock this month, especially the early part of February. I mean, you guys, out of all of the rising signs, are going to feel this Saturn Neptune shift probably more than any others. And if you want to let us know in the comments if you've been feeling that shift
Hmm.
up until this point with this recording, and I would say, especially if you got early degrees of Aries rising, that might be a hell of a shift you're dealing with. Now, this is going to be a longer story. Saturn is going to be there for the best part of 2.5 years. You've got Neptune for a very, very long picture and a very long story. So keep an eye out for just what maybe this is telling you as now these two planets come there full time until Saturn eventually moves out, but Neptune is there for a long time. So I think my advice is just to take stock. Not only have we got that Saturn Neptune conjunction in your whole sign first house, we've got a preponderance of planets in the whole sign 12th house. So I would just maybe the first couple of weeks of March again take stock. Maybe sit behind the scenes for a bit. If you have a chance to go and relax and disconnect and meditate to a certain degree, this might be helpful for you. You have your chart ruler, which will eventually come into the whole sign 12th house as well. So a lot of energy here for the first couple of weeks. But then, as Stevie pointed out, as we get deeper into the month, we've got all of these planets starting to come through your whole sign first house. I would
Mhm.
say certainly with that, if life has been a bit cumbersome, as that Venus comes through your first house, yes, she's in detriment, but if when the Venus hits your ascendant degree, just treat yourself for a day. Maybe go and pamper yourself, do something nice for yourself. Not only this, we have Jupiter stationing to go direct in your whole sign fourth house. It rules the ninth. So those themes might come up to do with the home, especially over a period of time. If you've been looking to expand the home in some way, this Jupiter might have been helpful. It's exalted and ruling the ninth house. So you might have some higher education qualities here. If you're studying at Kepler, for example, great time to keep doing that. And long distance travels, all things of this nature that come up through the houses for you. Wonderful. Okay, into our Taurus rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Mhm. Yeah, so Taurus risings, Venus is going to be on the move this month. So we know she's going to ingress into Aries and then into the first at the end of the month. So that's pretty busy, again, but you also have Venus running into Neptune and Saturn in the 12th initially. So I think a lot of what we think of as our busyness is also going to come with that caveat of there could be some struggle, inner turmoil going on, secrets, yeah, just backroom dealings that you have to make. I think in a sense it's very hard to get very retreatful with a cardinal fire 12th house. But whatever you do, that kind of 12th house really hyped up activity with Venus there will add that bomb to it as well. Um, and then you have Venus, I mean, just Venus hitting Neptune and Saturn is just it's as the Lord of your first with Venus in detriment, you could just be feeling kind of beat up this month. So it really could just feel that way as Venus, the Lord of your ascendant, and Venus also ruling your sixth house. So there could be like an illness, there could be a small cold or something, something with your pets possibly. So those sixth house, 12th house themes might be pretty personally affecting you in your first house areas of life. So watch out for those.
Wonderful advice, Stevie. And going on your point, I think my key phrase for you, Taurus Rising, is take a break this month. February might have been quite busy for you. We've got a lot of activity in which would have been in the 10th house, now the 11th house. We've got Mercury going retrograde there. So maybe you've been involved with community events. We've got a lot of planets above the horizon. So maybe you've been busy, been quite public in some way. And so, if that has been the case for the month of February, as we get deeper into March, it might be time to just maybe, take the foot off the gas a little bit, relax. To Stevie's point, your chart ruler is going to move not only into the whole sign 12th house and go into a detriment, but you have that conjunction with the Saturn and the Neptune. So, to Stevie's point, the Saturn and Neptune is going to be a longer story, but just be mindful of maybe certain habits that you might be have done over time where it might come up in terms of maybe health issues. Of course, your chart ruler rules a sixth house, to Stevie's point. So make sure if there's any habits that you've got, maybe it's a time to try and break some of those. In terms of work, I mean, we've got Venus ruling the sixth house as well. If life has been a bit cumbersome, there's a lot of energy and activity in your career. We've got Pluto, which is going to be a 20-year story. Mars has gone through there as well. If you've had any conflicts at work or with higher ups, then this might be a time where you just need to take a break, get the foot off the gas, and relax a little bit. But the only thing we have to be cautious about is the longer story of, I would say, probably office gossip or people trying to undermine you as we have some of these planets going into the 12th. So just be mindful of if you've got any intuition or inkling that people might be at cross purposes with you, just be mindful that there could be people working behind the scenes to your detriment. So just, this can be a nice month, but just keep I always think astrology, we have to be realistic. Talk about the potential positives, but also some of the issues that we might have. To tie in with this work theme, that Jupiter is going to station to go direct in your whole sign third house. This can mean many different things, and this has probably been going on for a while. Maybe you're doing more short trips around your local environment. Could be things to do with you have just a preponderance of emails after the holidays and you're just trying to work through all them. So work might pile up a little bit, especially again with that Venus rule in the sixth, Jupiter in the third. Just be kind to yourself, take a break if you need it, and yeah, just try and relax as much as possible for you.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so we have Mercury doing all of its tricks. So looking to the North Node, looking to the Sun, looking to Mars, looking to go direct. So there's just a lot of mercurial energy in and of course the 10th house for you. So work is definitely probably a bear for you guys this month. And you could be one of the people kind of tasked to be the problem solvers. Um, you do have all these planets making the trine to Jupiter in the second and Jupiter going direct, so there could be some greater payoff that goes through after that direct station. Maybe even when Mercury eventually hits that trine later next month. Um, yeah, so I think a lot of work stuff for y'all, a lot of good news with Jupiter going direct. Um, Everything that we sort of said about Venus in the 12th house is sort of being carried over to your 11th, and so the 11th is naturally the place of hopes and dreams. So it might be a month where even though you're feeling a lot of pressure and a lot of things happening at work, maybe you're feeling kind of starved for friendship at the same time or out of place within your friendship group. So look up for a little bit of that too.
I think that's wonderful advice. And I think for you, Gemini Rising, if you're a bit more introverted, you might have been struggling with this because we've got a preponderance of planets above the horizon. So we're activating your very visible area of the chart. To Stevie's point, we have a very active 10th house. In February, it went from 9th to the 10th. So there could be a lot of work related stuff. Especially here with your chart ruler not in great shape and going retrograde in the 10th house, just be mindful of communications with your higher ups, or if you're, maybe giving a presentation or a speech, just double checking everything that you have to relay to other people or your
Mhm.
underlings if you're in a position of authority, because we have got a lot of activity up there. This is compounded with the eclipses that are going to bounce back and forth between the fourth and the 10th house. So the north node is really highlighting the area of career. We've got the south node in the fourth house. So for some of you, it might just be a push and pull between home life and work life. And you might have been feeling this for a time, but this is
Mhm.
still going to be the case. We're still active above the horizon. We're going to have those planets switch into cardinal fire, highlighting your whole sign 11th house. So this might just be more activity as we get deeper into March in the themes of maybe community events or pulling together, whether you're involved in protesting, I think anything of that nature. 11th house whole sign themes. Now this Saturn Neptune conjunction is going to be here for a while, and you might have already had a taste of this, of again those 11th house themes, just thinking about your group structures, who are your allies in group settings. This might be a question you have to ask yourself, as the greater malefic and the Neptune may confuse things to a certain degree, of where you might have to restructure your allies again to a certain degree. So this might be a theme that goes on for quite a while for you. I love Stevie's point. We've got the greater benefic, wonderfully exalted in the second whole sign house, about to go direct, trining a lot of these planets. So there might be, to Stevie's point, some reward in what you have been doing. You've had an exalted Venus zip through the 10th house as well. So if you've got your midheaven floating there, maybe you've seen favorably upon in your career. Maybe you've asked for a raise and that's come about. Maybe that's been a good time for you. But with Jupiter there in the second house as well, it just might be a boon for getting the rewards that, with all of the hard work you've been putting in for quite some time, might show up for you. Okay, into our Cancer Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the two things that stick out for Cancer Rising this month is, of course, Jupiter going direct. This is sort of probably bittersweet for you guys because you're like, no, you're gonna leave. But it's going to also be a place to catch up on all of those Jupiter things that you were like, okay, these sort of things came on hold, and now it's sort of like when Jupiter goes direct, it's really easy to tell which things are going off the burner altogether and which things are coming from the back burner to the front burner. And so you'll have that kind of clarity and ambition. And then you also have the lunar eclipse, which your lord of your ascendant is the moon. So that's going to be pretty important. That's going to happen in the third house, which is the house of the goddess. So in Virgo. So there could be, I think out of anyone, there's like this, we have a retrograde Mercury again ruling this lunar eclipse. So you're like, well, and at this point, Jupiter is still retrograde. So the eclipse is really not the time to act, of course. Eclipse on their own, they're not, but with two retrograde hosts, there's really nothing to do except for what you kind of have to do. But I think the Virgo of it all, even with Mercury retro, is like again adding to the exalted Lord is going direct soon. So Virgo, Moon, House of Goddess, what really is taking care of yourself? What really is security? What are you can plan for the future. You just don't want to do for the future at this point. So with the retrograde Mercury there, it's a really good time to make very visible and reassess what these emotional needs are for yourself.
I love that, Stevie. Wonderful advice. And I do love this exalted Jupiter going through your first house, which you've been experiencing for some time now. But as that planet goes direct, it's usually one of the loudest planets in the sky. So you might, on the positive end, feel that buoyancy that is coming back to you. The only thing I would maybe caution against is overextending yourself. We have
Mhm.
Jupiter in the first house. It's angular. Anytime you have a planet that's angular, it's going to be quite loud. So I would there might be a lot of positivity in life. Just try and rein yourself in a little bit and maybe not take on too much that you need to do, because we're going to have a lot of these planets move into the whole sign 10th house. We have the Saturn Neptune conjunction there. And again, in an angular house, it's going to be quite loud for you. So this is probably going to pertain to your career, your public standing, and this is going to be a long time. Saturn is going to be there for a couple of years. Neptune is going to be a long picture. So just understanding that energy and working with it, because it's going to be very loud and prominent in your chart, and eventually those planets are going to square off on your ascendant as well. So just pay attention to what you're doing. Maybe don't overextend yourself. What I do love about this, as that greater benefic goes direct, it rules your ninth house. We still have a lot of activity here at the beginning of the month. So if
Mhm.
you're involved, say you're an astrologer, I know many Cancer Rising astrologers right now are just constantly out on podcasts, or they're constantly working. And if you're studying, say at Kepler College, this is a great time with the, yes, Mercury retrograde, detriment and fall, but retrograde, it's a good time to go back over your old material and old books, and maybe just solidify some of the knowledge you've been gaining, with the sun highlighting the ninth house as well. This is compounded with the North Node, and to Stevie's point, we have the eclipses bouncing back and forth from the third to the ninth house. So this can again speak to higher education, going overseas. Third house, communications of sorts. So yeah, just keep all of that in mind. This might be a nice time in terms of that higher education and higher study, which is very much highlighted here. What else I was going to say? Yeah, work's going to be highlighted. We're going to have a lot of those planets move into the whole sign 10th house. Jupiter rules the 6th house as well. So you might just have these multiple confirmations of work, career, public standing coming up for quite a time, as a preponderance of these planets are above the horizon. And this is not a time to be a shrinking violet. This is a time where there's a lot of activity in the social realm of your chart.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Leo rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Leo risings also, I mean, we have the lunar eclipse, but the sun is still involved in that. But the sun is ingressing as well, coming out of the eighth house to the ninth. So I think there's going to be some really mixed messaging for Leo risings of do I have agency or do I not? You're going from the eighth house, which is a place where you're very kind of vulnerable to other people and what their behavior is in your life. But then you're going to the ninth house where you have this beautiful trine. Sun is hitting its house of joy and exaltation. So ideally, this is the perfect time of year for you. But you have the pesky Neptune and Saturn. So I think unless there are some pretty kind of directed avenues for those planets to have a place to exist that and even within that context I just think it's unsafe to assume that you can go in without any stalls or having to just be blocked or initially misled um, but that ninth house travel education religion this is definitely some initiatory energy for going into a new religion, dedicating yourself. You know, Neptune and Saturn, I think in its best could be an extreme level of devotional um relating to your religion or your studies or whatever that ninth house it thing is.
Well, I love that, Stevie. And I think going on what you're saying, the positive end for Leo risings this month is especially as we get further into March, a lot of these faster moving planets going into your whole sign ninth house. Yes, they're going to meet up with the Saturn and Neptune, but I think this is going to give you a bit more drive and energy. The issue sometimes with transiting planets through the eighth house, whether you've got it natally or by other techniques, this is a house really where maybe on a psychological level, it can be the house of anxiety. We have a lack of control here. It's a house that doesn't see the ascendant. Now, this might just be different themes of shared resources with partners, Saturn in its fall ruling the seventh house, Pluto in the seventh house for the best part of 20 years. This could manifest to do with partners, shared resources, but really, and as we're going into tax season, I would just be double checking all of your taxes, especially with Mercury in its detriment and fall, retrograding back over the degrees. That when you're filing taxes this season, just double check. What did they say? Cross the T's, dot the I's, making sure everything is set in motion. Because for you, you have had this possibly difficult financial picture for quite a time. And now finally for you, that Saturn has finally pissed off out of the whole sign eighth house. And so maybe if there's any restrictions there, you finally have that Saturn out of the eighth into the whole sign ninth house. Now, what I do like about this is that yes, it's a Saturn in fall, but I do like when planets go into the whole sign ninth house and make connections or nice connections ultimately with the ascendant. And to
Mhm.
Stevie's point, maybe you can solidify, if you've been studying at Kepler College, you can solidify your studies. That Neptune is going to bring that spiritual quality as well. So I love that, Stevie, what you're saying, solidifying those studies, or you can have other themes like going overseas, all of these different things. But as the Venus meets up there along with the Sun, you might find a bit more buoyancy. The sun is your chart ruler. It's going to make a nice trine ultimately to your ascendant, depending on what degree that is. So you just might bring some of that fire and flavor and energy back into your life as we get deeper into March. Then I think ultimately for you, as we get deeper into the year, eventually as Jupiter goes direct and comes into your first house whole sign, you might get another burst of energy. But that's going to be some months away. But that's maybe something to look forward to as we go
Mhm.
through.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Okay, into our Virgo rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things going on in the seventh house of partners, of course, relationships, significant others, open enemies, even as you mentioned. And we see that all of the Lord of that house, Jupiter, is retrograde and going direct as well. So we're not only getting just a lot of commotion happening, but there may have been things with these with Mercury and Jupiter retrograde kind of relating to it right now that really, really feel bogged down. So there could be a big release in terms of the deep care and reassessments that you've been having to do regarding for seventh and 11th house. And so that could also be ways that you're plugged into wider networks of relationships, maybe union situations or groups and affiliations, putting a lot of energy into it or not being able to put energy into those groups and affiliations because of a one-on-one dynamic and sort of like you get to eventually get released from this release. But we want to note that, before that happens, you have Mars going into Pisces, Mars going into Mercury hitting Mars in Pisces. So that kind of just high need energy from the seventh is not going to be calming down anytime soon. And I think it will, it even like the lunar eclipse happens at the beginning of the month, and then you have a new moon at the end of the month. So you really don't catch a break all month. I think it's just a really exhausting. And Cal will tell you a little bit more about like where all these planets going to be manifesting from the 10th house, 8th house, and everything. So take it away, Cal.
Wonderful point, Stevie. I think the boon for you, Virgo Rising, is where you might get help. To Stevie's point, is when the Greater Benefic finally goes direct in your whole sign, 11th house. This might be a boon to getting support from your larger networks of friends. To a certain degree, yes, there's a lot of activity in the seventh. Luckily, the Jupiter rules the seventh, and being exalted, you might get some support from partners, but that might be a little bit more of a tricky area because to Stevie's point, we're going to have Mars going into the whole sign seventh house. Your chart ruler is not in the best of shapes. It's detriment and fall, retrograding back through the seventh house. So it might just be a lot of conversations with partners or one-on-one situations. Because really, when you look at your chart, everything is on the western side of the chart. So you're really dealing with, whether you like it or not, all about other people, whether
Mhm.
that's co-workers, whether that's one-on-one relationships, whether that's shared resources with partners. There's so much activity going on where it's less about you and more about your interactions with others that you really have to solidify and work out as we go through this. Because I know we're coming into tax season as well, you have this Saturn Neptune conjunction in your whole sign eighth house. This, to a certain degree, might come up to a financial picture in some way. You've got the Mercury retrograde going through the seventh house. So this might be conversations with the partner about shared resources. And we don't know if that's skilled or unskilled, depending on what else is going on in your natal charts when you dive a little bit deeper. But you still can't get away with the partnerships being highlighted, and it's being reinforced by the eclipses that are going back from your first to your seventh house, a north node transiting through the whole sign seventh house. So for me, it's all about having to deal with others, whether you like it or not. And
Mhm.
hopefully, with that nice Jupiter rule in the seventh, you're going to hopefully get some support in the back door to a certain degree. And of course, yeah, that Mercury, to Stevie's points, rule in the 10th house as well. So it might have something to do with career. You've got Pluto for the best part of 20 years, which is a longer story going through the whole sign sixth house. This can come up in many different ways. I would certainly, especially if Mars has been going through there, paying attention to health and habits, because this is reinforced not only by the Mars that's just been going through there, the Pluto for the best part of 20 years, but also the South Node transiting through your first house. I found this as a Libra rising that I needed to sort out with my South Node going through the first house, some of the habits I had to break and some of the vitality issues that I had. And this might apply to you as well, Virgo rising. So, bottom line is get support from wider friendship groups, be kind to yourself, and try and work out those relationships with others, I think, for you.
Yep. Yep. Hold on and enjoy the ride.
Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts.
Yeah, Libra risings are going to be thrust into that very relationship-centric place as well. Obviously, the sixth house is just getting a lot of action, health, again, health and those things that decrease vitality. I'm sure with Venus going through, there's been a little bit of at least access to reprieve, but with Mercury retrograde, I can assume that people are getting mixed messaging possibly about their health or their schedules. Meetings are getting canceled, like they can't be rescheduled easily when usually you could just reschedule easily and yeah, all kinds of things. So lots of kerfuffles going on with just like surviving day to day. And then you go, Venus goes into the seventh, and then the sun does, and that is your partner who's struggling to survive. So you kind of get like thrust from your own survival to your partner's survival this month.
Yeah, wonderful. And you're speaking my tune, Stevie, as a Libra rising. And a really interesting point you made there, some reprieve with our chart ruler being exalted going through the six. And I found that in the last couple of weeks that some
Wow.
of the Saturnian issues that some of us have had to deal with in reworking our day to day lives, our habits, our diet, certainly that I've been working on. I've worked with that Saturn, and now Saturn is finally out of the sixth whole sign house. And yeah, it's going to be a new story in terms of partnership and relationships. But on the health scene, if you've done that hard work with Saturn, like I have, it's actually been really helpful to have that exalted Venus coming through, and
Mhm.
some of the issues I've been having health wise have actually subsided. So Stevie, you've hit the nail on the head with that. So that may be for some of you a bit of a boon. And
Mhm.
yes, it's still being highlighted with the sun going through the north node. We're going to have the eclipses bouncing back and forth from the 12th to the 6th. So it might not be a complete finished story in terms of our shared Libra risings, in terms of health and routine. Maybe there's still a few kinks we need to work through. But luckily, we're going to have the greater benefic turn direct, rules the sixth house, and it's exalted. So that might be another helping hand to deal with these sixth house issues. And might be just a case of a lot of work on your plate. To Stevie's
Mhm.
point, we've had Mercury detriment and fall going retrograde in the sixth house. I've certainly experienced that recently in terms of workload and things being not quite being put together in terms of meetings or miscommunications. So that's something that you might still have to deal with, or we all have to deal with for
Mhm.
at least a couple more weeks as we
Mhm.
get to this. But as we keep mentioning, the big story is going to be the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Anytime we have planets in an angular house, they're going to be loud. So as we've been having this Saturn story and Neptune with possibly health issues over years, this is now going to switch gears into our interpersonal relationships, our one-on-ones, our partners. So, we talk about Neptune, whether that's partners that might not be quite feeling quite right. There's so many different topics we can explore here, but really the Saturn Neptune is going to be a long story for a long time. And essentially, we're having to deal with other people. A preponderance of
Mhm.
these planets are on the western side of the chart. We are in an age now where we're having to deal with other people, and it's less about us and how we, again, um, manifest those relationships and how we deal with them to a certain degree as we've gone on. Was I going to say something else? I can't remember. Yeah, I think we've got Chiron in the mix there as well. So it's just now we're switching that picture to those one on one relations. And to a certain degrees, we've got it here open enemies, something we have to be mindful of even in our, a bit cliche, even in our Libra diplomacy. Have there been people that we've been pissed off? And with these planets coming through there, we're certainly going to know about them if they come into our lives.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Okay, into our Scorpio rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Scorpios are you're getting your planetary ruler Mars ingressing into Pisces. I think there is going to be that sort of everything's been in the fifth house and so you've had this tense square with Mars. Now you're going into Mars joining the fifth house fun. But it's kind of like a chaotic party over there as well. So I don't know exactly how much fun it's gonna be. It's gonna be you sorting through like a very crowded obscured club or something like that, possibly with Mars conjoining the North Node and then trining Jupiter in the fifth. But I think yeah, use the time to play. If you're into sports or swimming, obviously, then Mars in the fifth is great, trining Jupiter. Um, it's Mars gets dignity by triplicity in Pisces, so there is sort of at least a level of like, okay, I'm a water sign rising and now I'm in a water sign. There is some kind of like coming home a little bit that you experience there. So I think for you guys it'll be a relief from the square. You have Mars ruling the sixth house with everything kind of moving into the sixth from the fifth. So again, it's sort of like I think right now is a great time to like do pleasurable activities that support your vitality, and then that'll like actually put that structure into place in the sixth house since you have Mars ruling both. So look out for ways that you can put ways that you are experiencing this Martian pleasure in the fifth into a daily schedule and take it with you throughout the rest of the year. Yeah.
I think that's absolutely brilliant advice. And I was thinking along the same lines that for you, Scorpio Rising, with your Mars being the chart ruler, maybe you're getting a bit of a reprieve from that Mars being angular. Anytime a planet's angular, it's usually quite loud. So if there's been any conflict at home, it might start to ease as the Mars goes into the whole sign fifth house and it's moved away from the square off your ascendant, depending on what degree you have. So there might have been times in the recent past where life has been maybe a bit frustrating or you're feeling a bit irritated. And to Stevie's point, we get more dignity with this Mars. It goes into the whole sign fifth. So I love that advice of if you're sports inclined, I would certainly blow off some steam in some joy and some fun, creative fun. And I mean, I would probably do this a bit more solo. We have the South Node in the 11th house. So I'd probably be more inclined to do things that are solo, sports oriented, whatever that might be for you. I love Stevie's point of going for a swim with that connection to Jupiter as well. It's quite cold in the northern hemisphere, so if you've got an indoor pool, this is a great time to let off steam, and your vitality will probably perk up around this time if you take advantage of those energies. For a longer story in terms of health and vitality, you are going to have to deal with this Saturn Neptune conjunction that are now in the mainstay in the whole sign sixth house. Chiron's thrown in the mix there as well. So this is going to be a long period of time with Saturn not in great shape. It's in its fall and it does not see the ascendant. So this might be a couple of years where you're having to. It might not have to do with health, but it might do. Just be going for your regular checkups. I would also say this might come out in terms of restructuring maybe your home life, maybe how you restructure your day to day life. Maybe there's certain habits that you have to be mindful of and get rid of to a certain degree. Neptune's in the picture as well, so things might not be always clear if you go for a checkup, and people might not be so clear on what's going on. So just be mindful of all of these. But I think with that Mars getting some dignity, to Stevie's point, ruling the sixth house, that might be giving you some help. But that's going to be a longer picture. Certainly pay attention to all of that. And yeah, these eclipses are going to be bouncing back and forth from the 5th to 11th. And so whether that's, dealing with groups of people or, doing fun, creative pleasure. If you've got children, maybe this is a great time to do a lot of work with them, some creative joy and some pleasure. And as Jupiter, the greater benefic, goes direct and is exalted in the ninth house, whatever your degree is, it's probably been making a nice connection to your ascendant, depending where that is. So yeah, all those wonderful ninth house themes. I love Jupiter up here. If you're involved in higher education, it's a great time to expand those elements. If you're looking to go overseas, all of these different things. Of course, you have to look at your own natal chart and other movement techniques to see what specifically is going on with you. But just in general, I do like this exalted Jupiter in your whole sign ninth house in
Mhm.
this moment in time.
Mhm.
Okay, into our Sagittarius rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Sages. I think for Sages, yeah, it's been probably pretty rough with Jupiter retrograde in the eighth house because again, it's a place where you don't have too much say over what happens. A lot of things are just an area of the life where more things are happening to us and we don't have as much say. Um, and You have Jupiter retrograde for months and then tucked away in the eighth, but now you have this wild Mercury retrograde story and the eclipses coming through the third and fourth house. You have Mercury ruling the 10th, which is disposited to Jupiter. So Jupiter is ruling your ascendant and your fourth house here, um, and Mercury ruling the 10th. So Jupiter in a place of you having lack of ability to act, more influence over others, ruling the Lord of your 10th. So I'm seeing a lot of issues at work, a lot of kind of disempowerment and probably having to just do things because they come up and not necessarily because they are in your job description, or a lot of like just that idea of your job description not really mattering anymore for some reason, unbeknownst to you. So I think the lunar eclipse will definitely be like another point of tension with that, but we are going to see, then you have Mercury and Mars meeting up, and that's going to be, so you have Mercury going direct and Jupiter going direct. So the challenges at home and at work, I think we will see at least like a loosening of the tenseness coming up, and I hope to see that for you guys. But it's not going to come immediately. There will be more peaks throughout this month of that tenseness.
Yeah, wonderful point, Stevie. And I think for you, Sagittarius Rising, it's not really a time right now to be shining in the outer world. We've got a preponderance of planets below the horizon. So for you, certainly in terms of the transit, it's about the private area of your life. We've got a preponderance of planets in the whole sign fourth house. Mars is going to meet up with there eventually as well. So just some certain things that you might have to deal with. To Stevie's point, we've got the eclipses bouncing back and forth from the 4th to the 10th. So there might be some push and pull between career and what you're doing and home life, but it seems like the emphasis here is more on your private home life and things you have to sort out there. As Mars comes through, there might be some conflict that comes up from the home. It's going to square off your ascendant eventually as well. So there might be some frustrating times here, but to Stevie's point, there is some loosening of this energy. So I think ultimately you can work through that. I think what's going to be really nice for you, and we're not talking about this in terms of March, but eventually that chart ruler Jupiter is eventually going to find its way later in the year into your whole sign ninth house. It's in another fire sign and it's going to make a nice connection with your ascendant. So you might be a little bit more buoyed and have a bit more vitality because even though that Jupiter is exalted in the eighth house, it's not seeing the ascendant. So you have a bit more lack of control here. But I think as we get deeper into the year, I really like that Jupiter going into the whole sign ninth house for you. And talking about work again, yeah, I think this might come up. South Node in the 10th house, Mercury detriment and fall rule in the 10th, in the fourth. Again, maybe some push and pull between what's expected of you and what you can actually deliver. And this is going to be a story for the rest of the month, really. And Venus is going to be nice in terms of going into the whole sign fifth house, maybe for some creative outlet. But that Venus is still going to be in her detriment, ruling the sixth house. And we've still got the tail end of that Uranus in the whole sign sixth house as well. So this might again pertain to some work piling up, things that you have to deal with in career. Just be mindful of that eventually, this energy will loosen up. But I think there is some positive news coming for you. I think more as we get deeper into the year with that Jupiter, I would say.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and for Sagittarius, just one more thing.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
If you guys are if you all have the floating midheavens, then yeah, just Sagittarius with the floating midheaven, then your maybe midheaven is in the 11th house. So that's especially for you, the double work situation going on where it's even more challenging for you. So watch out for your floating midheavens. Um, for Sages, because now you have the Neptune Saturn kind of moving in to oppose that, and this is with Venus and the Sun moving through the first but hitting those two planets, or moving through the fifth and hitting those planets. I think it'll be a first taste of like this renewed understanding and working with your midheaven going forward. So definitely just don't worry about it. I think it's too early to do anything about it, but I think this transit, particularly this month, might be a good first glimpse of what that actual exact Saturn opposition to your midheaven could look like. So just pay attention to the subtleties of Venus and the Sun.
Brilliant observation, Stevie. Yeah, if you're paying attention to that floating midheaven, see what planets rule in there. I think that's brilliant advice. Absolutely. Okay, Stevie, into our Capricorn rising friends. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so for us, we are experiencing, we don't know what we're experiencing. Our ascendant Lord is now conjoined with Neptune, and we're soon going to have Venus going over those points. I think that'll be a nice balm. But as you mentioned here, home and family, private life, um, short trips being canceled probably or rescheduled, maybe even. Yeah, I think we're the Capricorns are in that very early space themselves. Anyone who has Saturn angular to the midheaven, but especially the ascendant, we're gonna be like, what are we? We're gonna be going through a change, but we don't know what it is yet. But it's gonna take 2 years, and like we're sort of like Neptune is not even. I think giving us a lot of it's just I've already had one situation where we lost water at my house as a Capricorn rising, and it was really because my landlord wasn't even doing anything that needed to be done. It was because he was doing something that he just wanted to do, and then he ended up sort of making the whole property lose water. And so yeah, I think looking towards who are we going to be redefined as after this like detriment transit from our fourth house, you know, lots of home and family, lots of having to rework what's going on in the neighborhood. Yeah.
I love that those points, Stevie, and I keep saying this every month, but I always want to hug my Capricorn rising friends for the last couple of years, and I think it just pertains. Yeah, hug Stevie, and I think it just pertains to the fact that you've got so much going on in your private life. We've got a preponderance of planets below the horizon. Whether you're dealing with what you need to get on with yourself versus what's going on at home, so much activity here. And to Stevie's point, your chart ruler, going into its fall, it's angular, it's loud, it's in the fourth house conjunct Neptune. Some confusion there. I love, Stevie, your point. I would certainly advise if there's any water issues at your home, get them sorted out as soon as possible. Do not let anything like that linger. And with Saturn involved, it might also be just structurally your home. They might have certain things to fix. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a roof that needs replacing or HVAC system, whatever that is. I mean, this Saturn is going to be a couple of years speaking to that fourth house. And as your chart ruler, there's going to be a lot to say in terms of restructuring the home. Now, with Saturn, what we do love about Saturn is like what I love, what Marcus Patchett said, is that the two malefics are the planets that you pay up front. So for Saturn, you put in the hard work. It might be a bit strenuous and also being your chart ruler. But if you put in that hard work and you fundamentally structure or have to restructure your roots over time, you will eventually get to a point where you're solidified or hopefully solidified in where you call home or where you are. Because if you're going through a time where you may be looking to move house or restructure where you are, again, the initial couple of years might take a lot of effort, but ultimately Saturn will give us the rewards if we put the effort in. And I'm hoping that is the case for you, Capricorn Rising, that you will eventually get those rewards, and then eventually Saturn, after a couple of years, will piss off and get out into the whole sign fifth house and hopefully alleviate some of those issues. And what else was I going to say here? I think some of the boon that you might get is the exalted Jupiter. It's angular, it's loud in your chart, it's stationed to go direct. So hopefully that means some support from partners, one-on-one relationships might be quite helpful. The moon rules the seventh house, so we can bring in the lunar eclipses, all of those that might manifest. So hopefully you are getting support and you will get support from your partners if you're with someone, that is, of course. And yeah, a lot of activity. That Jupiter's ruling the third house might just be an uptick in communications. The North Node The eclipse is bouncing back and forth from the 3rd to the 9th. So just might be a lot of communication. The only downside here is we have Mercury in its detriment and fall, retrograde, which can be a bit of a doozy, ruling the sixth house. So just be being extra careful in your communications, in being clear on what you need to be at your best, and yeah, making that clear with other people as
Yeah,
well.
that's a great point. I've also already had I had a meeting yesterday. It took me like 30 minutes, and we have a Mercury is stationary now. So this is like
Mm.
preemptive of what this chart is going to be come March as well. And that meeting was already like, you drive there, check your phone. Oh, sorry, I can't make the meeting. Okay, well, good thing it's rush hour traffic for my drive home. So great point about the sixth house. Just during this retrograde moment and the Mars going to meet up with Mercury and all of this, sixth house issues is like for everybody, but especially those with the third house, sixth house scheduling stuff. Um, it's just not going to be easy to reschedule, and you might find out that the meeting is like too late to reschedule, and all sorts of stuff just for the next month, basically. So yeah, real.
Wonder, yeah, for real. I love that advice, Stevie. And the last thing I'll say on this is that I think as we get to April, things might, um, be a bit clearer for you. I do like that Venus is zipping along quite fast. So yes, goes into
Mhm.
the detriment, fourth house. It might clear through, but I do eventually at the end of the month like that Venus going into the home sign, into Taurus, whole sign fifth house. So you might have a nice break with if you've got any children. It might be a pleasant time. And as that Venus gets more dignity, rules the 10th house. If you've had any issues in terms of work and career, hopefully that will ease up by at
Mhm.
least the end of the month for
Mhm.
you.
Absolutely.
Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Stevie,
Mhm.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Aquarius risings have had a lot going on recently. Of course, everything just moved from Aquarius season into Pisces season. And now they have one last, Mars hanging on by the thread there going into the second. So, of course, finances are coming up, but also work. So, how you procure the finances, where you get the money from. And we have Jupiter there in the sixth house. So, of course, upticks in work. I've definitely have seen with Aquarius risings with this um, Mercury in the second. Um, I've seen them being the problem solvers too. Like these are the people with, if especially if you have Mercury in Pisces already or retrograde, um, you have an ability to sort of be a decoder. So it is that like decoding issue. So if you're stuff at work, you might be the person at work who is able to speak the secret language or decode the issues around the money, finances, or in the workspace. And then you have Jupiter retrograde in the sixth, ruling your finances. So you have that direct motion this month, and I think also Aquarius is I know right now going through health situations. I think with Jupiter in the sixth, it's a great time to actually get the care that you need and have really positive interactions. But with Mercury, um, retrograde. I know Mercury is not ruling the six. I'm bringing it up just because it is very much how we think and speak. And it is in Jupiter's sign here. So there is like from the sixth house ruling the second situation happening. So if there's doctors that you've had to go back and see again, recommunicate with, I've seen this happening recently, and I've seen it happen with people who are finding new resources, going back to your therapy, being, having the eclipse in the second eighth, ruling the sun ruling the seventh there, the moon ruling the sixth. So if you're seeing a therapist, you could be revisiting things with a therapist. So you'll see the seventh house, sixth house of health relationships. Um, I think you'll find help with partnerships in health at this time. So I hope you are already, but if not, that's an avenue.
I love that, Stevie. Wonderful advice. And picking up on what you're saying, the financial picture, I think what's helpful for you, Aquarius Rising, is you've finally got that Saturn, Neptune out of the whole sign second house. So hopefully, in the last couple of years, whether you've had to maybe have some delays or restructuring finances in some certain way, hopefully that story is completed as you go into the whole sign third house. And to Stevie's point, it's not quite wrapped up yet because we have the eclipses back and forth from the whole sign second to the eighth. We still have a lot of activity here. To Stevie's point, we have Mercury in its detriment and fall, retrograde, going back through the second. That Venus might be a little bit of a boon at times if
Mhm.
you've got a side hustle, whatever that
Mhm.
might be. But to Stevie's point, that Mercury rules the eighth house with the South Node in there as well. So I would certainly be cautious of tax season, making sure you've got crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's. Because even though that Saturn Neptune has come out of that picture, you might just be still wrapping things up on the tail end, even though the nodes are going to be there for a little bit longer. But hopefully for you, that's something that's a story that has come to a completion. Now, as you have a new story in your whole sign third house, I don't
Mhm.
mind this too much. I mean, it's different to a conjunction in an angular house, which is more loud and more prominent. So yeah, there might be still issues in terms of third house themes,
Mhm.
siblings. It could be short journeys. It could be issues with the car. Just maybe more minor things like that. Communications, all these different things, and especially as you tie that in with the greater benefic going direct, magnifying the whole sign sixth house matters. But I think on the whole for you, I don't mind that Saturn Neptune conjunction too much in the whole sign third house. Ultimately, it doesn't make too bad of a connection with your ascendant either. So I think ultimately, and let us know in the comments if this has been the case for you, it might just be a little bit more eased for this major conjunction for you in the whole sign first
Mhm.
house. Of course, the bigger picture, Pluto for the best part of 20 years, that's going to be a big story for you. Hopefully, you've been okay with Mars transiting through the first house, and hopefully, no minor cuts or accidents for you. And as that Mars goes into the whole sign second house, maybe you're just putting more effort into your financial picture. So just keeping
Mhm.
an eye out on that as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. And
Okay.
everything's gonna
Oh,
be, oh, sorry, everything's
sorry.
gonna be sextiling the Pluto. So
Ah,
again, whenever you have that outer planet in the first house or any kind of angular house just hanging out, you really do see the strides pick up of like what it's doing when the sun makes the aspect to it on the way through Aries, when Venus makes the aspect to it. And of course, right now it's going to be a lot more clear based on the Neptune and Saturn that are also involved in it as well.
I love that, Stevie. Wonderful point. Okay, last but certainly not least,
Mm.
into our Pisces rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this Pisces season is been an eclipse season. So we did have the other eclipse out of Pisces, but the node was obviously there. Um and we're having the lunar eclipse in Virgo Pisces. We have the Mercury. I mean, it's just Pisces are very busy this month, and we know that you all got your relief from Neptune and Saturn moving on into the seventh to the second, but it's sort of, I don't think you're really going to feel that relief really until everything moves out of Pisces, just for at least a month or something. So, you're even going to have Mars doing kind of cleanup duty for everything, and then you will have the North Node there for a while. So it's not going to be all or nothing for you, but you'll see a new world open up for you of probably peace and calm once sort of all of these inner planet, very busy little planets that move so quickly too. It's like they're now coming through. Mercury is going to be retrograding. Yeah, so there could be, of course, Cal noted, them's be fighting words. So just you might be one of the ones who has to experience that very directly with Mars and Mercury in your first. But Jupiter going direct is going to be sort of the belle of the ball for you this month. And if you have your ascendant or any planets in the second half of Pisces, this is really just going to be opening up the floodgates for you. But all Pisces for now. It's just you really will be able to hopefully return to faith, return these fifth house pleasure, joy, children. Of course, you're gonna have to kind of get through the mess of the beginning of the month in order for that to happen, but I'm looking forward to it. And then you have Jupiter, Venus going into Taurus, so it's looking to be a nice spring for Pisces.
I absolutely love that, Stevie, and being the belle of the ball, because I think what that speaks to as well is for you, Pisces rising, we've got preponderance of planets on the eastern side of the chart below the horizon. So for me, this is kind of like you do you energy. We've got
Hmm.
the eclipses bouncing back and forth, North Node highlighting your first house, Sun obviously it's your season, it's Pisces season. Mercury dancing around back and forth. Yes, detriment and in its fall. Well, dancing around the first, so anything you've got to say, just be doubly careful about how you communicate to others. But tell us in the comments how that Venus has been treating you. I said last month, if you had the opportunity to go and pamper yourself, wonderfully exalted Venus going through your first house, and still for a little bit at the beginning of this month. So go treat yourself, go pamper yourself. And not only that, to Stevie's point, I love the two benefics here. Not only wonderfully exalted Pisces, Venus that you've been having for a time, but we have the chart ruler of yours stationing to go direct, whole sign fifth house, house where we can have a lot of joy, a lot of fun. So to Stevie's point, relax, enjoy yourself. If you've got children, have a nice relaxing time with them. Things might go well. I mean, the Jupiter rules the 10th house. So things in career might be swimming along. I mean, that's not going to be for everyone. Of course, you've got to pay attention to your own natal chart. But in general, I do like these connections. And to Stevie's point, I really enjoy this for spring for you. The only things you might have to keep an eye on is, of course, the bigger picture of Saturn Neptune conjunction in your whole sign second house. This might not be as obvious straight away, but you're going to be spending a couple of years thinking about possibly income, how you derive income, and all these different themes that you have to think about. But this for you is going to be a longer theme in terms of your finances, so just keep an eye on that if it's already come to fruition. And but all in all, I think this is a nice time to relax and enjoy yourself this month.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
So, as always, Stevie, thank you so much for going through all of the energies of the first couple of weeks and all the rising signs. I absolutely love your brilliant insights. There's things that you say and that I don't think of, and I just bounce straight into it. So, I love the dynamics. So, asking what's coming up for you, what is coming up for you, and what should people know about?
Thanks, Cal. I always love your insights as well. And just, it's just, we're very Aries together. So sorry, everyone. We're just like, but I am happily working with Enid right now in delineation synthesis, and I will probably be back around with her next time. And other than that, I'm taking the summer off, so it shall be nice.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you, Stevie. And where can people find you? Are you still active on social media and
A
different
little
places?
bit. I'm sort of hibernating on socials, so you'll see me here mostly or in Kepler. So come to our school if you want to see me.
I love that. I love that. Capricorn Rising, all below the horizon,
Mhm,
chilling out,
mhm,
chilling
mhm.
out for a while. So again, thank you so much, Stevie, and thank you for everyone tuning in. And we'll see you all again soon. Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Cheers.